asleep.
I think we're almost there.
Okay, it's actually working.
Okay, let's then call the meeting to order if we could, and it is now 6:32, Madam. Thank you. Roll call. The people who are here tonight are Rick and Tony and Eric and me. Paula called me very ill, and so we don't want her here tonight. Much as we love her, we don't like her terms. And both Penny and Colin had former commitments, so we are at a bare quorum tonight on the Finance Committee, but very important meeting, so thank you, those of you who made it, including Rick. And I want to take a moment to thank Rick for 4 miserably difficult years on the Finance Committee. I know this is his last year, but I can't tell you how much I appreciate all you have done.
It's been
all the hours and hard work you put in, and the fights with Mitch.
Which he has won.
Every one of them.
That was the one part. He's the same height I am. He's just wound tighter.
Anyway, thank you. Thank you very much. And I wish you much luck in whatever new endeavors you decide to take on. Because this has been pretty much all encompassing, I know. And then, Ashley, would you like to introduce your guest? Or your not guest?
No, our new coworker, Jamie Pacau, and she is going to be sitting in on finance and board meetings. I have some other projects that definitely require all of my attention.
Excellent. And so Jamie is our new support person. So
yes.
Jamie, we're very glad to have you
for the next quarter.
That's great. Welcome. We're really glad to have you on board.
I'll point out that the other major project she's taking on is bringing the maintenance program up online.
You're talking about Ashley.
That's correct.
Yeah, Ashley is taking me on the role of technical guru, maintenance software guru. Anyway, thank you. And we appreciate all you've done for us. You've kept us organized and something. Anyway.
Jamie will be great. No doubts. None whatsoever.
Okay, so let's take a look at the agenda. Does anyone have any items that need to be added to the agenda or need to be changed? Any? No? All right, I'm going to assume without objection then we're going to approve it by acclamation. Also, we have attached here the minutes of our meeting on October 17. They look fine to me, but I wasn't here, so I'm assuming they don't. Okay, so
They look fine.
They look fine, and Eric, you're good with it?
I think they're correct.
Okay, good. So,
Move to approve.
okay, move to approve.
Second.
All right, thank you. Those who are in favor. Okay, then we're moving to approve because all 4 of us voted. Okay, great. All right, and then let us begin with the capital request. So if you would please,
Ma'am.
Mr. General Manager.
Yes, ma'am.
Mm-hmm.
As mentioned in the meeting notes that we talked about just now from October 17th, a capital life extension program was discussed at the last Finance Committee meeting, and on page 8 you will now see that same proposal. All right. So the proposal called Golf Cart Life Extension Capital Request requests capital funding to perform a capital refurbishment on golf courses to extend their useful life 2 years. In a nutshell, Suds Valley has a fleet of 50 golf carts. 10 of those were purchased in 2011, but the remaining bulk of them, 40 of them, are 2014 models. Our last payment for our lease will be up in this coming next April, and that we'll have a $1 buyout. Considering these have been stored outside almost all year, the fleet's held up pretty well. But a business goal for Brian's golf cart enterprise, or golf enterprise, is to avoid another cart lease payment for 2 more years. We would like to stretch this out. And so that would require a maintenance investment into the current fleet to ensure they remain reliable, functional, and good physical condition. So if you, the second paragraph basically says that if the association were to lease 50 carts right now, a conservative payment of $40,000 a year or $80,000 over 2 years. And we believe that's a very credible, conservative number. If we also believe that capital investment, high reliability, maintains the aesthetics, will save the association $60,000. So we're asking for $20,478, which includes materials tax, a 10% contingency from Surf Capital Fund to purchase and install the materials required to extend the cart fleet for 2 additional years. We think the return on investment is stellar, and here we are. That's our basis.
One question.
Yes, ma'am.
Will this be for all 50 carts that we will be refurbishing? Because obviously some of these are a few years older.
So
Take care of them.
it's a good question. The older carts will remain in reserve as backup carts when we get into a requirement where we have to go to max use. This is going to be for select carts. Not all the carts need a refurbishment, but some of them need seats, some need motor starters, some need the cover in the back for the carts. They're all going to get, I believe they're all going to get a USB connection.
It's on page 9.
Yes, but it's for a select group of them.
Okay.
So you can see 20 starters, 20 solenoids, batteries.
Got
It's a
it.
select group.
Yeah.
This was assembled after Jacob did an assessment on all of our carts and said, this is what it's going to take to do it. It's not an across-the-board move to replace all the components. It's what's necessary to get 2 more years of cash out of these.
Maintenance on them. Have they been maintained?
They are maintained.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay.
So this cost includes the labor to put them in?
Yes, it does.
Do what's in our surf account now? I don't know.
We don't.
We don't have any.
So we don't have any money set aside for capital refurbishment of these. We do have money, and we would be expecting to do a new lease for carts. We want to defer it for 2 more years.
But that lease would go in effect in 2019.
20.
2009?
Was it 20?
Is it 19 or 20?
Oh, I'm sorry, it expires in
Well, it
It
expires in
expires
19, so if we were to postpone this for 2 years, it would be 2021.
Can we delay this until January of 2019 so it'd be served
Next year.
for next year instead of this year?
Well, I have to be honest with you. We could. I don't think that that's a big deal. We can delay it. I'm going to go back also. The cost to do the work is in operations, not in this. This is straight materials because this is going to be performed by the mechanic.
Our staff?
Our own staff does this. We can wait till next year, but surf rolls over. And so even though we would take it out of 2019, that's a 2-month wait. And surf does count roll over. So if you want, we can start it in 19. I don't see a problem with that. Do you see a problem with that?
I don't know about the, I would be a question for Brian, actually.
Do you see a problem with it? No. I just want to make sure that they are, the
I-
job is done before springtime.
Right,
When he
I
starts
don't
to
have a
ramp
problem, if we had available surf funds, I would say, okay, but you're saying we don't have.
We do have the available surf fund.
No?
Yes, we do.
Well, the only issue is that we don't have it on the surf list.
It's not on
for
the
this
surf
year.
list.
In
That's
other
correct.
words, it's not the high priority items, and this is one of the concerns I've had, is that we have been doing things that are not in the priority. So if we were to wait until the first of the year
I've been out of the loop so
and
much.
review the priority,
Yeah, I've just been out of the loop so much, I have no clue on what we've done on surf as far as the priority list.
Yep.
I don't even know how much we have in surf available for the
and I
end of
think
this
Jennifer
year.
could probably tell you that.
So, I'm bad on that, but, if,
Would
I'm
cart
curious
replace,
about,
would the cart replacement have been on the surf list for next year?
2019.
2019.
Right, and so
So
this is
this
getting
would be-
ahead of it
Mhm.
by a hair to head it off.
Mhm. And if we did it in 2019, it would be a year in which the lease was.
I think that's irrelevant because we're still carrying it over 2 more years with the work on it.
It is a substantial cost avoidance.
I'm just curious, if Jennifer could explain what would be the difference from an accounting perspective as to what expenditure would be handled versus this expenditure?
Are you talking about your year, this year versus next?
No, I'm just talking about in general on our books.
Oh,
Why isn't the labor included, or?
No, so if we just went out and leased, like we have been doing historically, like we've traditionally done,
So the golf carts are through a capital lease, and in capital lease, those assets we own right at the beginning of the lease, and we start depreciating them right away, and so that is a surf expense. The
so the
capital,
whole surf expense goes in when we take out the lease,
it does, the whole
and
thing,
then you depreciate it.
and then we depreciate it out,
So
yeah.
what are you gonna do with this?
So then this similarly will go in until the money is spent. So let's say we took out a 5-year surf lease. It'd be probably, I assume it'd be another 5-year lease. The one we
Right,
have now is
yeah.
5 years.
Right.
And if it's $40,000 a year over 5 years, then that's $200,000. And then that money would be set aside out of surf, saying that.
So you're gonna depreciate this up too?
Yes, this will be
And you can do it
depreciated
as
as
a lump
well.
sum versus an individual asset units, like the golf carts themselves.
Yeah, it'll go on as one item onto our fixed asset cost, and it'll see golf cart refurbishment. Then when we sell the golf carts in 2 years, then both the golf carts and the this item will come off.
Okay, so we don't have to keep track of them individually.
No, we don't need to keep track of them
Like if we
individually.
go buy vehicles all the time, those are all individual bases.
Those are all
This is
individual
a
bases.
lot.
Yeah, so they and if we only sold half of the fleet, only replaced half of the fleet in 2 years, then you just take half of this, so that's a reasonable estimate. Yeah.
Then another question would be, should we add these on a reserve study in the future or not?
Yes, I think that the refurbishment of the golf cart should get added in when we do our 2019 reserve study, to have it as an item to get added in, so that way every 7 years you have a new fleet, and then at the end of the 5-year period you would have a 2-year refurbishment, and that would get added into the reserve
Remember when we
study.
have that in?
We don't.
We have the new fleet in the reserve study, but we don't have this capital refurbishment.
Okay,
And I
so
think
that's
that
all,
it should
I'm
get
just trying to
added in.
figure out how we
yeah.
manage this going forward from an accounting.
Yeah, so when the 2018 reserve study is done, this item is going to show up on there because we're going to add it in.
Okay.
So I think that whether we approve it now or we approve it in January, I think that it will come up as a high priority item. I mean, from management's perspective, I don't know from your perspective, but I think that it would come up as a high priority, and then it's really just a timing issue whether you approve the funds now or you approve them in 2 months. The benefit of approving them now is that we can plan, we can start ordering these things, and we can make sure we will be sure that by the time the golf season picks up that this work is done. You know, that Bill can go ahead and he can fit it in between his other jobs if he's not going to have to work any overtime in order to get this done. And so I think that it's beneficial cost-wise to the association to approve it now.
Seems like there's 3 options to me here. One is to not do anything, let the carts die, the lease expires, and now we have a big expenditure in 19. That's one option, correct?
Yes, sir.
Another option to do with maybe somebody's talked about is not doing anything until January, just because of line item on accounting sheet that somebody's looking at. Or the third option is to approve it, knowing that this is gonna save us, this is a huge investment, it's triple the return on the investment.
It's real hard to say no to that.
Yeah, so it becomes a high priority, and why not do it as staff?
Jennifer raised a really good point. So as we go into the winter seasons, Bill's time becomes conversion of the trucks to snowplows and maintenance of the snowplow and the winter equipment, and our seasonal equipment is put to sleep. So this is perfect fill-in work over the winter time without having to do overtime.
Do we have a motion?
There is no motion on the floor, and there's,
Make a motion, so, yeah, let's do the motion first.
yeah,
Make a motion that we approve?
approve it as is for this year,
Yeah.
okay?
I second.
All right.
I have one more question.
I have a question.
Oh, yeah, there's plenty of question time.
Just get it on.
Now that it's on the floor, let's discuss.
All right, so I understand that we do have the CERT funds available this year to accomplish this and take it off the list for next year. Is there anything else this year that CERT is going to be trying to accomplish that this might offset the funds for?
Everything that you have in the request packet right now is the only thing we're gonna be bringing in November and December. I don't think we're bringing anything, I'm not aware of anything right now that we are bringing in December. If we have a shortage of a snow plow piece of equipment, that. But other than that, at this time, no. Now, as you, a director, know, we had a fire in the maintenance building last Friday night. And that was a temporary heater that was wired into the building. You'd already approved a new heater, and that new heater is going in. Short of an event of that nature, I anticipate no further SURF requests until we redo the reserve study, which we should be starting on now.
How much we have left in SURF for this year?
I was just looking for the September financial statements. I couldn't pull them up, but if I recall correctly, after the $600,000 carryover, I believe it's approximately $60,000. But that was before the additional approval by the board for the $500,000 loan. So those two should offset each other, maybe increase the SURF balance a little bit.
Personally, I think we just clean the slate for the next year and pay for it this year and get it out of the way. I don't know how much we've done on the high priority items for 2000. I don't think we've accomplished a lot of stuff on the 2018 priority items. We have all these other things going on, so let's just clean the slate and I think just move on for next year. That's my.
I think if I can recall correctly, the most important priority items were the things we were going to lose. And those were the things that you bought as a SURF project last year, which we have now gotten the loan for, and that we are either have completed or are in the process of doing. Those to me were the most critical ones because they were assets that were on the verge of failure.
Yeah. Okay.
And there are others that I think we put as high priority that we're still exploring, things like the kitchen. We haven't talked about that at the, those are things that are going to take a little bit more study, and I think that's what I'm hoping the SURF team can focus on next year and bring us an updated priority list.
I'm really pleased that the reserve study is going to be getting done here at the end of fourth quarter, beginning of the first quarter, because that means that there's a lot more time left for planning and getting projects done instead of having it done later in the year. I think it really allows you to create a good budget and plan out when projects can be done, when there's time for it, and get better pricing, better lead times, knowing what projects you have on the horizon.
Call the question?
And without objection, then those in favor of approving or recommending this one for approval to the board, which will go next Thursday to the board, signify by raising your hand. No opposed, it's unanimous. All right, thank you. Thanks for all the detail on this too.
You're welcome. Also identified on the October 17th finance meeting was the next item, which is a lot more, not as clear. So it is a new office, building out a new office in the clubhouse. And it is for a sales office, which we do not have. So we're requesting funds to build out a new sales office for the golf department. This has been an item of discussion for many months. So the association's singularly largest amenity lacks an office and working space for its managers and for any sales and marketing effort. The head of golf and the head golf pro both share a 77 square foot prison cell sized office. And I believe that that is preventing them from doing their jobs. The head golf pro is hired to run day-to-day operations, freeing up Brian to drive on marketing and increasing our market and our sales for the association's golf enterprise. And while they both remain in that cell-sized office, neither of them is freed up to perform the job. There's two guys in that office, and Brian's not there. People walk in, they're talking to Scott. Brian's there, they're talking to Brian. Brian's not supposed to be in that office. It's holding Scott up from doing his job. And it's not why we hired the head golf pro. This project proposes to convert a small section of the men's locker room, which is way in excess of what we need, into an exterior accessed office, separate from the locker room. The existing area, as I said, is access to locker room needs. Now, should the golf program not obtain the value sought by marketing, which is what Brian's job is now to do, this room will revert to a meeting room, which is also a resource in short supply. We have spoken with Brian, and he understands that his position in marketing has to have metrics and performance goals. He can't really do that job in the space we've given him. So the office will house a desk and a small meeting table, provide space to conduct marketing and sales with clients, including corporate customers. HVAC is going to come from a small 1-ton wall-mounted unit, and we'll install 2 new interior walls and put in power and communications, split out the lighting. So this is requesting $14,861, includes tax, design, some contingency from Surf Capital to fund a new office building and meeting room in the clubhouse. This is also going to be supported by member donations. Members will be coming in to be performing some of the work. They have offered to do so, and we were going to let them. It is a very small job. We will manage this like we're the general contractor. It's not a big enough job for us to source out to a GC.
I'll make a motion so that we can discuss this further. I'll make a motion that we recommend this to the board as presented.
Second. You last second.
This was my last version.
He's not seconding it, sir.
I second.
Okay, very good, very good. Okay, so let's discuss. So, questions, comments? Oh, I love that.
No.
All right, well, I'll start. So, one of the questions I have is, can you explain a little bit about the strategy for, I want to get a better understanding of the strategy that is in place for the new head golf pro versus Brian's director of golf position. How do they work together? What are the expectations for us, and how does it benefit the association?
Good questions. Totally relevant. We hired a new golf pro to run golf on a day-to-day basis. Brian's been trying to do marketing and managing and running the golf enterprise. Well, we want golf to grow, and we see an ability to go ahead and go after more market share. And he's asked us repeatedly over the years for a salesperson, which we have declined, to hire a staff person for him to do it. Brian this year cut down his hours. We negotiated a time. He wanted to reduce his hours for a while to work on his part-time job. He has a side business, and he's talking now, we're talking about going up to 75% time. Well, the head golf pro that he hired, a very competent young person, should be managing the golf shop, the business side of it, the rounds, the play, the customers, working with Jacob. Brian should have overall knowledge of the program, but not be involved in day-to-day decision-making of what's going on the golf course. He should be separate from that. His job, he should manage the supervisors down there, let them do their jobs.
And he manages the golf pro employees?
That's correct. He
Okay,
manages
so that
the
is
golf
all
pro.
Scott's responsibility.
Scott's job is to manage all the staff and the program. Brian's job is to manage Scott and Jacob. You agree?
Yeah, oversight of the whole program. But those
Right.
two-
But not to get into this, not to get in the weeds, so to speak. All right, and to then market our golf enterprise to bring in more rounds, more customers, more corporate customers, and increase our play and our revenue. That's what we want Brian to do. So these two guys are sitting in a 77 square foot office. One of them's at a student desk, all 6'2" of him is crammed into it. You can't get into the office when the two of them are sitting inside that office, and they can't do their jobs while they're all both working in that office. You can't back around, you can't turn around. It's not big enough. It's smaller than a prison cell, which is why I refer to it that way.
But they can become,
Although I think it's appropriate because it is golf.
but they can become very good working partners in that space.
Not really. I don't think I'd like that any further. All right, it's a cell. They do get along remarkably.
Yeah.
So all joking aside, if I want to go down and talk to golf, now I should be talking to Scott. Brian's there, I'm talking to Brian. Scott is in the back shop, he's sitting over at a table in the back room or out somewhere else instead of sitting in his desk doing his job. There's no room for it. And everyone goes and sees Brian. I need Brian out of there. I need him focused on sales, not in the mix in the golf shop, working on day-to-day issues. That's what we hired a golf pro for.
I don't think that anybody would disagree with what you're saying.
Yeah.
I'm just
One
pointing out,
question
I'm
is,
answering your questions.
You hire the people without the resources to do their jobs, that's kind of,
That's it.
I mean, what, it takes all the resources. You can't make a pie without all the ingredients.
And so the uncomfortable ingredient in the mix is a capital alteration to the building to build an office. And Brian's been after me to build an office. And he gave me a couple of different suggestions, and every suggestion I looked at, I thought, no, it's not an appropriate use of space, or you can't give up any part of the back room. I'm not going to have that become a subdivided office where they store golf bags. So this, I think, is the best use of space. We took the lockers out of the men's locker room, and we redeployed them into the locker rooms here in both the men's and women's. And that was a really good use of those beautiful lockers. So now we have this big empty space in the men's locker room. Now is the time to convert it. I mean, if people want to come in, clubs want to go meet, we don't have space to sit down and gather. Clubs don't have it, we don't have it. Customers want space to sit and meet. Sometimes they want private space. Sometimes we do. We have one meeting room in the entire building for us. Otherwise we have to leave the building and come here. It's suggested that I build a space out in this building for golf. I'm sorry, I want to have golf over a golf, selling that program. I'm not going to try to sell, marina space over Area Z. So
does this cover everything? I mean, what about furniture?
we're going to buy used furniture like we did before. This isn't going to be
Not a
ours.
capital request.
It'll be in there. Listen, it's in there.
Oh,
When we built out the conference room downstairs,
Yeah.
$400 for the table and the chairs. I mean, we go in and buy used office furniture.
Okay, I'm just trying to make sure. We've
It's
got the
everywhere.
total recipe here now.
Yeah,
But if we did this right, we would have quotes of what we're going to be spending on this $14,000.
so
And that's,
that's fair.
I mean, that's what I think the board would ask for, is document what these costs are.
So I did receive late the quote from Barron for the air conditioning work, and I did receive that late. And I did receive finally a quote from an electrician for the electrical work. And so I've gotten those two, and don't I have the quote for the carpenter?
I didn't see anything on here.
Did we put that in? Okay, I do have a quote from the carpenter.
It's in here. But which page is it?
I don't have any of those.
There were
No.
no. There were no other attachments other than this that I have.
You have it?
Nope.
Oh, this was for the cards.
Yeah.
I apologize.
Yeah.
Oh, we have.
This
That's
is
why I
the
asked
only-
the question.
Okay, I have the quote from the carpenter. I did get the quote from the carpenter, did get the quote from the air conditioner, and I did get the quote from the electrician. Those are my three. And Carol called me yesterday and I was all giddy and she said, "Why are you in such a good mood?" I said, "Because I finally had an electrician who responded and given me quotes for work. I can't get them." So I finally got one. So, okay, I do have the
Yeah,
quotes.
that's my question. I didn't see anything in
It's a
here.
failure on our part in communicating.
Yeah, those will be a big thing at the board
Yeah.
level.
So I do have hard quotes for those 3 items. We're gonna, our volunteers are gonna paint, and we're gonna put down floor tiles, and we have floor tiles, we'll put them down.
I understand that this is capital work, and so it's appropriate that SURF would fund it. This being a brand new thing, it's not on the reserve schedule. Is it appropriate that we just recommend it be funded out of SURF, or should we have SURF funded somehow by UDR?
I don't have a problem with SURF being charged to SURF again this year because we don't have anything.
Nothing pressing.
Nothing pressing, and we have the money to do it. The only other thing is, I think the other major expense that we should see is you're gonna have a glass door.
The doors are in the carpentry club.
Okay,
Doors and window.
okay.
Doors, window, walls.
The only thing, I hate, since we know we need the space, I hate really tying it into what his sales numbers are going to be. This is an office that he's going to have to, based on what you're saying here, he's going to need that space to do his job. And I hate to have that contingency there saying, you're required to do this or you're going to lose your office. To me, it's a necessity that he has the space available, but I have a hard time quantifying what the success will be for him to accomplish to get these things accomplished. And I hate tying performance to a certain
I
project.
have a different perspective on that. My feeling is, if we are going to spend the money to do this, and it's considered a requirement in order for him to meet the goals, what I would like to know is, what are the expected improvements that we're going to see? What is our ROI going to be on spending this money to, I hear what Brian's saying, and I know he's gonna need the space, but how do we justify it or demonstrate it as a benefit by improving? What kinds of improvements are we expecting? How will it be measured?
So that's why
I think it's hard, but I think it can be done.
But
I don't think it has to do with SURF, I think it has to
Yeah.
do with the total resource, the operational dollar. It's just if we have add a position to our staff, you're expecting something out of it. So, because we're expanding our golf staff, we're expecting a return on the investment.
Because I think it's not just the sales office, it's the fact that that's why I asked.
It's the position.
We have a change in the structure. How is this going to benefit us? I think the members will want to know, how are we going to expect to see improvement? What is the goal, in other words?
I think that you're all correct. I mean, look, you cannot measure a sales and marketing campaign in terms of 12 months or 18, probably at least 2 years, right? Because it's a seasonal activity, right? So, but you have to be able to measure your success.
Absolutely.
So now, as the manager, myself or the next general manager is going to have to say, okay, your job is sales and marketing. I see your trend over the last several years is slightly rising on membership internally. What is your goal? And that's for Brian and I to work out. What are your goals for your job in increasing the revenue of the association through the golf activity? All right, that's the enterprise that Brian manages. That's one aspect. The other aspect is, all right, you take an employee that's an $80,000 job and you say, okay, can you be effective sitting in a 1/2 of that space and do your job? The answer is no, because we've now taken away his tool to be able to do his job also, and taken away the tool for this new employee. Operationally, we increased the corporation's operational costs by bringing in a golf pro. So we now have 2 people besides Brian who can teach golf lessons, which is another attraction for people to come and play golf. They can get lessons there. So that's the other value this person brings. They don't need an office to do it, but they need an office to be able to schedule all of the activities that are going on. So I think it's a combination of all 3. They have to have a measurable quantum to be able to show performance. He does have to have an office to be able to manage
His
30
job.
person group. That's his job, right? And he needs the space to be able to bring customers in to say, I'd like to talk to you about golf.
And my only thing is, obviously, some months back, we made a decision to change our business plan.
That's right.
And that business plan should include the resources to achieve that business plan, which apparently.
It did not. I didn't like the plan for the office at the time.
So, but as we talked the last time we met, it'd be nice to see some metrics of some data of where we've been, where we're at, and some targets of where we're going. And absolutely, you can't just hire somebody in sales and say, tomorrow, we're just gonna flip the switch.
But you've gotta have a goal in mind.
But
is
you
what
gotta,
I'd
you
like to know.
gotta have a business plan.
That's right. I need him to have the rest of the tools to be able to do the job. And this space actually is in the quiver. It's a tool. He's got to have it.
Yeah, it's part, the space is for him to do his job. But I still have a problem with tying that into his performance in approving this. It's a necessity that he has a space available to do his job, to manage his staff, to do his marketing. It's a space, like in any other space that we have, do an office. You're not going to, in my mind, you're not going to base his performance on the space. You're going to base his performance on what he does. And to me, I don't like tying his performance just on this office space and say if you don't perform, because we don't have any criteria what his success rate's going to be.
So let's, I respect what you're saying, Tony. I'll caption my response this way. If we build the office and we don't need it for golf, it's not a dead space to the association.
No, and I agree. I don't have a problem with that. I just have a problem with tying it to his performance.
I'd like to interject something here. Nothing in the motion tied anything to his performance.
Well, it does say it here. It says that if he doesn't perform,
It does.
it takes the office space away from him.
What it says is exactly what Mitch just related, which is if that space turns out to not be viable for marketing, to obtain the value sought by marketing, then the room will easily revert to a meeting room. And so
That's how I read it is.
Mhm.
I don't read it say anything.
I'm taking this away if you don't get 5 more customers.
Yeah,
every
that's
2
not
months.
what I want. All I'm saying though in this whole process is.
But Brian, I'm going to take it away if you don't get 2. No, Tony, it wasn't written with that intent either.
back to the cell.
Yeah, no, I don't think so. But I think somehow I feel like it would be good for us to, as your background to this, is to say or communicate what the goals are. Why do we feel this will improve? I mean, I know that it's got to be difficult sitting in an office with 2 people. I couldn't even, when Brian was by himself in there, going in and just sitting and having a conversation, you couldn't really close the door without feeling claustrophobic. It's a tiny office, it really is, and I agree with that. I just think that some kind of metrics or just as background for this, not as a condition of it, but just so that we demonstrate that we get that there are challenges and we believe that some of that those goals will be more easily met with this kind of a thing. And I'd like to know what those are.
And shouldn't that really not be tied to this, is I think where Tony's coming from.
Background, I'm
But
saying
shouldn't it
is
be
that.
part of the overall staff plan that we approved
Yes.
for the
It
year
should
and
be.
operational budget?
I agree. But this is coming up at a time when I think that one, it's not on SURF.
Yeah.
And I have a challenge with that because it's something else that we're adding that we didn't have, and it's not on the reserve study. It's not even on the reserve study.
It wouldn't be, it's new.
And it's new, I get that, I understand that, but I think because of that, we may have to treat it just a little differently, that's all, to provide a little more background for it.
What Director Trauer proposed, I think, is a relatively smart idea. May I follow up on that?
Please.
I believe that it is, there's no question, according to our rules of capitalization, this is a capital improvement. And so it would go against the asset of the building, to the capital improvement to the asset. I would recommend that we take the money out of UDR and transfer it into the SURF account to fund this activity. So SURF will pay for it because it's a capital improvement, but we do not decrement SURF. We go ahead and take the money out of UDR and increase SURF the amount of money requested.
Well, that brings up the logical question, how's UDR looking?
Great,
It's actually quite well funded. I would like to thank all the people who have contributed their late dues,
that wasn't,
willingly or otherwise. Service UDR is in the 160, $150,000 range.
So it seems to me what we're talking about here is the concern about tying performance to this request.
Yeah, I hate saying if he doesn't do his job, we're gonna revert.
I don't think that's what it
Right.
said, I don't.
That's what it says to me.
Okay, when,
Okay.
maybe it needs to be rewritten, you can rewrite it.
Want me to take that sentence out?
Yeah, I don't like that sentence in there.
Could we propose that we recommend this to the board while removing that sentence? Would that
Yeah,
be-
that's fine with me.
Would that be what is the difference between recommendation and not?
Well, I probably would recommend it in the long run, but I hate tying it into a performance.
I can take this out. I would like to be able to leave in that the room itself provides a value-added asset
That's fine.
to the corporation.
So take out, should the golf program not obtain the value sought by the marketing, just take
And
that,
just leave the
take
room
that out.
easily.
Yeah.
And
room
leave
easily-
instead, the room will easily revert to a meeting room
Should,
if needed,
if
if needed.
the room
take
itself
out
offers a
any
long-term
other
value as a meeting space. I'll be happy to make that change.
That's all I'm asking.
I even take out a resource in short supply, I know, we know that, I don't think we need that, just say, the room will easily revert to a meeting room if needed.
Very well.
Or appropriate or whatever.
I think that,
Long-term value is meeting room or office space.
right, I think that the investment in office space that we need is important.
Yes.
Even if it weren't being promoted.
Absolutely.
Right.
There's no place
Yeah, I agree.
to have a
I
private
totally agree.
conversation.
So I think that, and add to that, we need to provide tools to our staff to be able to accomplish the goals that we've set for them. And right now, that's being underserved. And so
I agree, I totally agree.
I think that this is a great investment of $14,861.
Can I add something too?
Yes, please.
There's also maybe an element for the fact that once the lockers were removed, something has to be done with that space. The locker pole.
I don't know, I haven't been there.
Well, right now you have a great meeting space for men only,
Yeah.
behind some yellow tape.
If they bring folding chairs.
Yes.
All right. As I invited the treasurer to view that, she said, I don't know the last time the general manager invited me into the men's room, and so I will decline.
I thought it was not a needed thing, I'm trusting. I'll
Are
look
we,
at it from the outside.
Are we ready to call the question?
Yeah,
I have 15 minutes left.
Oh, you got
I would
it.
just make a
Oh, you're
suggestion,
out.
Mitch.
Okay.
Since this is my last time here, that in the future,
You say that like you think it's real.
since the golf is our biggest resource and one of the things in the community is under fire by non-golfers to some extent, it really would be nice to see a business plan and to do a year-end recap of all the great things that's happened in the golf department for the year. And I know we do that a little bit in the news and stuff, but I think we could do a better job, or maybe the next general manager could do a better job of
All right, so moving this along, will you also please add,
Had to
the
think about
quotes?
that.
Please include the quotes
Yes,
at
ma'am.
for the board. Okay, so.
Call the question.
Thank you. Those in favor of passing this along? To the board.
The next one, and my last one on
Yes,
this.
please, Miss Ashley.
The GM made a recommendation, money out of UDR, sir? Is that-
Oh, that's
Oh, we
right,
didn't
yeah.
add that in there.
We didn't add that in, we could do that right now.
Do we want
To
to make an amendment
recommend,
to recommend it? Do you know, Jennifer, your opinion
Oh, in my opinion,
on SURF or UDR?
you know, SURF, our UDR is relatively healthy now. But as our collections continue to increase and the amount of the accounts, that are past due decrease, there won't be as much money that goes into UDR in the future. There are big emergencies every year, snowstorms, etc. So if SURF does have the funding, perhaps it'd be best to take it out of there. It's not, in the grand scheme of capital projects, it's not an overly expensive capital project. However, I think, you know, it's really up to your
It's our
discretion.
decision,
Yeah,
so.
I would say we leave it alone since it's a capital project.
You're all
to begin
okay
with.
with it. It's gotta come out of SURF anyway. Okay.
Just makes me think of all the seniors,
Yeah,
$30,000
I
every
agree.
time.
All right, very good. Okay, does
Sorry.
that answer
Yes,
your
I just
question?
wanna make sure.
Okay, moving on.
The next one's a little more straightforward. I'm coming in, this is a roads capital request, windward drainage design. I'm requesting capital roads fund to do an in-depth analysis to identify what are the fundamental causes that have changed the flow of rainwater along a section of Windward Drive. I've had engineers out there, their report is attached. The report is long and vague. I think that the answer,
Is this the area that's just past the Rotunda exit?
My old house.
Oh,
It's,
yeah.
oh, is this you?
That was where I used to
no,
live.
but
That's
it
why
is
you
the
moved.
back of Rick's house that I think is possibly causing one of the problems.
No, everything comes from the golf course.
Okay, let's stay on track.
No,
Come.
Everything comes from the golf course,
Yeah.
over the road, what's that, Par Lane, up there?
Par Lane is
Birdie,
on the right-hand side as you're going.
Birdie's back
You're
there.
thinking Birdie.
Birdie Lane.
Birdie Lane.
Oh.
I know that's Birdie Lane.
Everything comes
He
from,
owns a house in Birdie.
everything comes from where Brian Smith lives on the golf course, comes down, used to come over our house and would pour coming down on our house.
Okay.
And water would flow across the
Is
street.
that new information?
No,
Okay.
you're making my argument.
Yes.
My point is, we have a transition of rainwater that is not draining. It has occurred, they say, rather quickly, but anecdotally, in talking to all of the neighbors, this has been increasing over time. So several different events have occurred, and I'm not exactly sure what they are. So when I talked to Wilson, they said, well, we would like to do an analysis of the design, a permit, and estimate. And I said, no. I'm afraid on this one, I want just the analysis to be completed before we do anything further. I want that up front so we all agree, where is this problem coming from? Because it is starting to damage several homes. All right, so I'm asking for enough funds to do an in-depth analysis. I would like to be able to go in and evaluate, have them do elevations. I want to go find out which drains are plugged. We've already sent maintenance in last week and clear out and vacuum the drop-in culverts and the drains.
Didn't they sandbag over there last year?
We did have
Yes,
sandbags
it
there.
is for a while.
It's a 20-year-old problem.
Yeah, and it
This-
keeps getting deeper each
It's
year.
a 20-year-old problem.
It needs to be resolved. And so I want to just ask for an allocation of $10,000 from the roads capital to do the analysis. I do not think we should do anything further until we have an analysis. And I might take that analysis and hire a second engineering firm to come in and say, do you concur? Because it's been a long-term problem. We want to know exactly what is the fundamental cause.
Okay, so let me ask a question on this particular piece before we go any further. Does this come out of the emergent funds issue on the, or
It does.
fund on the roads?
It does.
Okay, what's our status on that particular fund?
Well, that fund every year has about $70,000 in it, and we've spent some money out of it this year. There are additional funds to do this $10,000 project. However, there aren't the funds to do all of the design work this year.
Okay, but this would be just for the analysis.
Just the analysis.
Okay, then that's what I wanted to
Okay,
know.
so,
All right.
well,
Can we have a motion,
before we go
please?
much further, let's make this motion
Yes,
to
please.
recommend to the board as presented here.
Okay,
Second.
thank you, Tony.
And
Rick's
then
just not gonna second anything.
then I'd,
He's already gone.
knowing that this is, and coming out of the emergent issues contract that we have with Wilson, we're not gonna need to get more bids.
No, it's just an emergent issue.
And so that would actually violate the contract if we did that.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
So
What other
I'm not
questions
sure
and
what else.
conversations? would
I've read through all the materials. I agree that this is something that's immediately necessary. And
I laugh because this is,
I'm sorry it was too late for you.
it didn't bother me. Everything was going across the Chuck's house.
I was there, I can tell you, it starts up on Birdie Lane.
It does. Everything runs off.
All comes from Rick's
I
house.
think as these things get identified and dealt with, this is how it happens.
I'm pleased that we are finally doing something because this was left to deaf ears. years
Well, I
ago.
will tell you, Mitch made a comment at the AGM in his report about the fact that all of the work that we've been doing over the last 4 or 5 years has really reduced the amount of flooding that has been happening in people's homes. We've had very few calls to deal with that. So something's happening right with the culverts and we're starting to get a handle on it, but this is a big one.
Well, you see, there are basically no culverts here to catch the water on our side, my side, outside of the street.
I don't
It's
know
just-
that but I'm guessing there's no ditches.
There's no ditches.
There's no ditches, but the culverts, I don't know if we have culverts underground.
Yeah, there's a little small one here.
Evidently not enough.
A 2-inch one.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not.
That's not.
Call the question?
Okay, those in favor of approving this particular analysis? Okay, unanimous.
Thank you.
All right, last piece
What did they do it 10 years ago?
is, we're gonna talk just briefly about the RFP. We sent out a request for proposal. This is the year, 2018, when we once again need to go forward and get bids on audit services. We typically do a new bid every 3 years, although we can do it for less. The problem with doing it for less is that an auditor is less. It takes auditors a year or two to get familiar, and if you bring in a new one every year, then they have to start all over from scratch, and it usually is more costly and so forth. But it is a good idea to get a fresh set of eyes, looking at our records, just in our accounts, just to make sure that, something obvious isn't being overlooked. Larson Gross has done a wonderful job for us for the last 10, 12, 14, I don't know how many, but too many years. And so at this point, we are looking at a new one. We've had 3 proposals. We looked at all 3 of them. Larson Gross's was one, and their amount was very similar to the one that you have in front of you, which is Newman and Associates. There was an additional one that we got from California, but they are not licensed in the state of Washington. Only one of their CPAs is licensed. And our concern with that is that means that we're dependent on one person, and if anything happened to them, we don't know quite what would happen to our audit. So we are recommending that we go with Newman and Associates, and here's one of the reasons why, is because the cost is about the same, not a whole lot more, a couple thousand more than Larson would charge us.
It's actually less.
Oh, is it less? Oh, I apologize, a little less than Larson would charge us, and that's given the fact that they have to travel here from Seattle a couple of times. And given the fact also that they are going to have to spend extra time reviewing what Larson has done in the past. But the real advantage is that they do exclusively HOAs. And so they have a large background and history and knowledge on HOAs, and so we felt it was a good firm for us to get some service from. So, and I called them, called Jeremy and I got a hold of his associate, Kathy Kuhn. And one of the things in our proposal said something about only making 2 trips up here, one to do the audit and then another trip to present to the finance committee. And because of how I had the proposal written. And so what we'd like to do is instead have a video conference with the finance committee and have them come up and actually do a proposal in person to the board of directors. So,
In person to the finance committee?
no, in person.
Oh,
to the
I'm
board
sorry,
of directors,
the
yes.
video conference
Yes.
to the
Video
finance
conference to the
committee
finance committee.
in person.
And in
Yeah.
person to the board of directors. And the reason being that I think it's important for the board to be able to question them. And I think we can do the same thing at a video conference pretty easily. So they agreed to that. They thought that was a great idea. But if we changed our mind, they would come up. It's probably just would be a little bit extra fee for the travel time. So that's our recommendation. And as you can see, they have, let's see, is there a fee in here? I read the whole big book and didn't see this one.
$25,000.
That's right, $25,000, that's right. Yes, that's right, Larson's was 26,000.
26,600.
And we were also, we had the choice of doing a 1 year, a 2 year, or a 3 year.
I wouldn't recommend
Contract.
1 year.
No.
And we agree that 1 year doesn't make sense. So I am going to make the motion that we suggest to the board, recommend to the board that we approve the Newman and Associates contract for 3 years for $25,000.
So that's 25 for all 3 years?
Each year.
Each year for
For each
three,
year.
each
Yeah,
year.
for each year.
35. Yeah, there's no escalation for each year.
The budget is, in 2019, is $28,000.
Yeah. So we will put that forward to the board of directors. Okay. All right. Any other comments about that? All right.
I think it sounds great.
Main pool upgrades, sir.
Oh,
sorry.
pardon me.
Yes.
Does the finance committee actually vote on that?
We can't. We would.
We could make it.
I did make a motion. If you want to just second it, and then we'll.
I'll second that.
All right. Those in favor?
Hey, great, try somebody new.
Agreed. And we'll see. You know.
They seemed very knowledgeable. I met them at the CAI conference, and they were at CAI Day, so they're up on the coal law and everything that's going on there, and they do exclusively homeowners associations, and they were asking great questions about our special assessment, how it was funded, did it have a loan, was there a prepayment option if it had a loan,
They were probably the most thorough in their request for information. I talked to Kathy and she said she had talked to you at great length and she was very impressed based on what they heard from her as to how we're running our association, so.
I'm glad you reached out to that somebody.
Mm-hmm.
One of my side concerns was that Larson Gross is providing our IT services, and they were offered to us because we were retaining them for auditor services. But they are separate contracts, and I don't see, if they want to renegotiate that in the future, that's up to them, but I think that what I've observed, Larson Gross is doing a great job for a very fair price.
On the IT.
On IT, yes, well, I'm
They did.
not
Well,
saying
as
the
well
board
as
is,
the audit too, sure, absolutely, okay.
separate contracts.
All right, do you, if we're done with that conversation, do you want to talk about the main pool upgrades and quite cool something?
With the finance committee approved a certain amount of funds in October for us to go forward if needed to solicit designs. And we went to the board and we talked about it, and I asked to have the request pulled I believe I'm going to go forward to different companies and just directly solicit their bids to do the work. Unfortunately, we might have to play general contractor on this, but the work is very convoluted between the shed. The engineering is not difficult, but I need a specialty contractor, so I think I'm going to solicit bids from some companies to do the work rather than ask for a set of funds and to do the design if necessary. I'm going to go back and rethink this.
So you're gonna kind of ask for a performance type bid in result,
That's right.
rather than a detailed spec of, right? Oh,
I would try to go forward with a request for the work
yeah,
without a spec,
yeah.
and they're not comfortable. And the funds that we had, I didn't want to do the design work, so I'm going to ask them, you give me a performance contract with you doing the design work, with you doing all the construction work, let's bid it that way.
One of the challenges on all these is that they're not big jobs, right? None of them are large projects. Is that right, Mitch?
That's correct, they're all very small.
And trying to find a contractor who's willing to do small projects is really difficult. So I suggest that we try to bundle them to give somebody something more to do and make it more worth their while. So we'll see what they come up with. Okay. Yeah, anything else?
No,
Okay.
well,
And-
as far as, you're moving on the agenda now?
Yes, I'm moving on like any new business. Question mark?
I have a couple of questions if nobody has anything new. I don't think we had anything added. Just to recap some of the discussion that we had on new business from last month.
Okay.
The new business last month included, let's see, the WeQ banking transition. Is that underway, happened? Last month we talked about the WeQ banking transition.
Right, it was just to say that, one of the board members was given access to Sun Valley's business accounts with their personal accounts, and that it was taken care of and corrected within a 24-hour period. And I have a letter from the bank saying that, that access has been removed and they audited the funds and no funds are missing.
Oh, I was referring to the NCU, the requirement to keep the funds below the $50,000
Oh,
threshold.
that's already been done. Didn't we approve it at the board?
It's been approved at the board. I have not made that transition yet. I'm actually going to go to the bank with Carol this week
We have to go together.
and
So
close the accounts, roll the funds in, and then transfer them over to the new account. I wanted to wait for the new check signers because it would have required everyone to sign again. So I figured let's just wait a couple weeks and we'll do it then.
Let's see, the other things that we just talked about last time that might have some good feedback here, the building deposit account.
That's the building deposit account one, to remain within the FDIC and CUI limits. That's what
Oh,
you
that
were
was extra
asking
detail
about.
there, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
because we're transferring the building deposit funds back over to our main banking partner, so we can remain in compliance, because we have $230,000 in our building deposit funds. And then at the WECU, we have the Lake Whatcom Water and Sewer District $135,000 bond, plus our regular checking account, and then this $230,000, so that puts us over the $250,000 limit.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
That's it?
Yep.
Financial statements.
They don't have any, it's, I have a,
They were on the list, but
it should
but I
have been on there.
Okay,
I'll-
so I understand that you also sent, and I haven't seen the newspaper yet, but you sent.
They're posted.
September to the
September's in the newspaper, so those will be in the
Mhm.
newspaper.
Yeah.
And we'll all see those, and then next month we'll have financials for whichever month you're working on.
Mhm,
We're
correct.
pretty much caught up now on financials.
Yes, so.
She had a little bit of a challenge because of some
There was just,
training issues, let's just say that.
yeah, there was just a little challenge. My accounts payable person is new to her role and new to accounts payable. while she's very organized and has been in banking and collections for most of her career, she is new to the accounts payable position and picking it up quickly. But there's definitely just a lot of additional review that needed to happen with the general ledger just to ensure that everything is being posted right. I review the check register every time it comes through, but sometimes you don't see the mistake until it's grouped with the rest of the expenses and the GL. So,
Nothing's lost, it's just
No.
maybe not posted in the right
yeah,
way.
nothing's lost, everything's posted, just maybe in the wrong department or in the wrong expense post. So just moving it around and ensuring that that's all accurate, as well as reviewing all the journal entries and transactions that occurred while I was out on maternity leave and making sure that those are all posted correctly as well. So there's a lot of GL review to get through.
Well,
and
we're
then
really glad
while
to be
making the
back
budget,
and on
so
top of it all.
yeah, so I'm feeling more caught up than I have been. It's nice.
Excellent.
Yes, I mentioned to someone the other day, well, I'm getting caught up. And he goes, well, it's that time of year.
Just
That's
before
usually
the
how it
audit.
is. Yes.
That's good, that's great. Okay, so next, member questions and comments. Anybody, any comments or questions?
Well, I would like
Okay,
to-
Madam President, yes.
I would like to welcome a member who has never
Yes,
been here
yes.
before.
Very good.
Carolyn, is that correct?
Yes.
Carolyn, hi. This was your first finance committee meeting?
Here,
Oh, you've been to others then.
I work in the county,
Oh, excellent, okay.
Okay.
but I work in fewer hours because I am aging.
No, we don't,
So-
we're more mature.
We don't allow that.
Yes, we don't allow aging, only more experience and maturity.
Yeah, I work in a nursing home, keep telling you.
Thank you.
Joining me, I have a little bit more time, can stay up a little bit later. Instead of just grousing to my neighbors.
Well,
Get
we're
my
glad to
butt
have
there,
you.
find
I
out.
hope that you will come and ask questions and provide thoughts and so forth. We're always glad to have people who are willing to come to the
Put
meetings.
that in the minutes.
Put that-
It's on right in.
Yeah, she's perfect.
It's on video, it's,
Yeah.
Every member of the association just heard you say that.
Everyone is looking anyway.
Well, welcome, thank you.
Yes, welcome. We're really glad to have you. I hope you come back.
I shall.
Thank you. Leslie?
Yes, I was interested with Tony's thought about moving the funding for golf cart refurbishment into next year. I think that we've already paid money for leases this year, and we are expecting, if we hadn't made this decision, to start over with leases next year. And I think that this is almost too expensive for golf in 1 year. And if there is no urgent reason to do it right now, it is my opinion that we can move this funding into next year. The other comment was having to do with our financials. They should, whenever possible, be attached to the agenda which is sent out for the Finance Committee. Understanding that there are circumstances where that may not happen, and when that does, I would like to see them attached to the minutes for that meeting, so that when people look at the minutes, they can see what the discussion is about as far as the financials are concerned. Okay?
Thank you. And I will just, part of the follow-up to that, one of the things that happens is when we have handouts such as finances and that sort of thing, they do, after the fact, they are attached to the agenda so that people can look at them and see them, and they're always posted online.
Okay, and I don't know if people understand that they have to go back to the agenda as opposed to forward to the minutes, which is, to me, part of the
True, but
meeting.
I think it's because when we talk about them, they are on the agenda of that month, and so, and already they're delayed, so like if September is out in November, that's
Yeah.
sort of, it's always about 6 weeks behind.
I think the reason I miss it is because you see the agenda and you see on the right-hand side the numbered pages. You say, go to this page to find such and such.
Yeah.
Well, there are no numbers on the agenda, so people don't know to look for it.
The agenda packet, there are numbers.
Now,
There
the
are-
financial statement.
But the financials.
But if the financials
are
aren't there, they're right. They're in front of you. We can talk about maybe some way to make it easier for people, I don't know, but we have a separate location for the financials, right?
Okay,
Mhm.
maybe it's just, communication,
Yeah.
error.
I would like to thank all of the input from the community and staff for how to better communicate these things. I also wanted to thank Jennifer and Mitch for this year in participating in the finance committee. This was my first year, and I'm not applying for the finance committee this year. I think that it's going to be in good hands again. But thank you for the time that you guys have spent with me. And
Yeah, I will say Eric has been my right-hand person. He's come to every meeting, he's been at meetings I wasn't in. So he's been just really helpful, thank you. And I think that going forward, the more of us who are familiar with financials and can understand all the workings of how things get accomplished, the better we are all going to be as far as getting, moving forward, getting progress done. So
Well,
now
you
you
guys
have
made
all
it-
the experience.
well, it was really great. Jennifer made it make sense.
Yes,
So thank you.
very good at that. Thank you, Jennifer.
I think that when Jennifer came on board, and what we had today, and like you said, it's in good hands.
Definitely.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank
We
you.
are, our association is in extremely good condition financially, and it's in very capable hands.
And just ask Larson Brooks.
And thank you, Ashley, for taking care of the minutes.
Yes. And thank you, Jamie, in advance for taking the role. Who else can we?
And thank you, Carol.
All right, so, all right, so
John Boy, good night.
I'm waiting for
Move
the
to adjourn.
adjournment. Thank you. Adjournment.
7:43.
7:43 is correct. Thank you very much,
So,
everybody.
record.